in Tucson. Members have been attending a private congressional prayer service. They're returning now to devote the rest of the day to a resolution honoring those who were killed, injured, or worked to save others last weekend in Tucson, Arizona. Among the injured, Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. Live now to the House floor.
Were postponed earlier today. 4 hours and 6 minutes of debate remained on the resolution. The gentleman from California, Mr. Lundgren, has 2 hours remaining, and the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Pastor, has 2 hours and 6 minutes remaining. Next recognition. Gentleman from California.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield such time as she may consume to the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Myrick.
The woman from North Carolina is recognized.
Thank you. Thank you for yielding the time, and I think, like everyone else who's here, I'm here today in support of this resolution, not only because it recognizes what happened in that tragic situation that just shocked and saddened all of us on Saturday. I think most people in America were really just in a state of shock and not actually knowing what to do at that time. When we saw what was happening, not just to our friend Gabby Giffords, who was a friend with everybody here, is a friend with everyone here, but also to all the other families that were touched by this. It goes so deep in the Tucson community when you look at the 6 people who gave their lives and the people who are still in the hospital fighting for their life, and all the heroes of that day. I mean, we keep hearing story after story after story of the heroes that emerge, just ordinary, everyday Americans who do what we do in situations like that. We don't think about ourselves, but we come forward to help the other person. And there were so many people like that who literally saved lives. Gabby staff members who were so heroic at this time, and just the shock that all of them I know are still going through, but I know that they are really heartened by the fact that most people in America are just reaching out to them, and people are saying, what can I do? How can I help? Where can I be of service to this situation? And that's what we do in America, is we come together, we pull together. You know, we say, okay, we need to be Americans, and Americans first. And I think that's what we're seeing out of this. And I just hope that we, throughout this country, continue to maintain that feeling of goodwill toward one another, of wanting to help one another, of wanting to reach out to one another, and wanting to work together, no matter where we are in the country, because that's what makes us great. And so our prayers and our support are with Gabby and the others. They will continue to be, the reports appear to continue to be good, which is so gratifying and so heartening to all of us. And we all look forward to the day when she's back here standing on this floor with the rest of us. Now yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Florida.
The gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Pastor. On behalf of my community in Florida, the Tampa Bay area, I rise to honor my friend and colleague, Gabrielle Giffords, her staff, and the other victims of the Arizona shooting tragedy. The arc of time that Congresswoman Giffords' service to her community and in the U.S. House so far has proven to be a time of change and challenge. Through it all, Representative Gabrielle Giffords has 4 years ago, Congresswoman Giffords and I arrived as part of a class, Republican and Democrat, that had very high ideals. She was a leader from the very beginning. We adopted ethics reform, we bolstered veterans, we sought modern solutions for energy challenges, we helped more students attend college, and she particularly promoted scientific innovation. She sought a seat on the Armed Services Committee at a time when our country was struggling with the war in Iraq. She sought that seat because she wanted to ensure that the military personnel and the bases in her district had a champion, and did they ever. Congresswoman Giffords rose quickly to become a leader on solar energy and on immigration reform. Gabby works to strike a balance with pragmatic policies that actually work. And whether it was President Bush or President Obama, Congresswoman Giffords spoke up boldly for additional resources on the U.S. border. I know it sounds like a modern fairy tale that this beautiful, smart Congresswoman marries an astronaut, but a love of science and a love of their country brought them together. And she was a champion for NASA and space exploration before she married Captain Mark Kelly, but she has become one of the greatest advocates for the mission of NASA. In 2007, our economy began to contract and people lost jobs, and Representative Giffords stood up to fight for them, for help for the Tucson area and our great country. It has not been easy, but Gabby does not give up. As one of the more youthful members of Congress, Congresswoman Giffords has served at a time when the first president of our generation was elected. Can I have 15 more seconds?
Gentlelady, I yield another 15 seconds.
Thank you. Gentlelady is recognized for 15 additional
seconds. It is
seconds.
a time of hope and promise, but in the middle of a time of great economic challenge for Arizona, for Florida, and for all of America. But Gabby Giffords has an optimistic eye to the future. She believes that working together we can solve many of the challenges before us. And in her honor, we must recommit to doing so. From the stories of the victims and the heroes in Tucson, it's obvious that that is a community composed of remarkable individuals. And it may explain why the Tucson area has sent such a remarkable public servant to represent them.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Louisiana, Dr. Fleming.
The gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank my friend from California. Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of House Resolution 32. Last week, in an act of cowardly violence, our friend and colleague, Gabby Giffords, was gunned down at a public event intended to give her constituents a forum to express their opinions. While our nation honors, mourns, and remembers those hurt and killed in this senseless tragedy, it is imperative that we strengthen our resolve as public servants to not let these acts deter us from the important work we do and from who we are. America was founded on the idea that the people have direct access to their elected representatives. And as long as I serve, I plan to continue that tradition. As Speaker Boehner so eloquently put it, no act, no matter how heinous, must be allowed to stop us from our duty. Our thoughts and prayers are with Congresswoman Giffords, her family, and all those who suffered from last week's events. And finally, God bless Gabby Giffords. God bless the victims of this tragedy. God bless this institution. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Minnesota.
The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Let me thank the gentleman for the time. On behalf of the people of the 5th Congressional District of Minnesota, let me offer my heartfelt condolences to those great, brave Americans who lost their lives in the tragedy of Tucson. Let me offer wishes of a very speedy recovery for those people who were wounded, including our own friend and colleague, Gabby Giffords. And also let me offer congratulations to those heroic people who jumped up to help their fellow Americans at a time of tragedy and need. It would be very human for anyone to be a little bit shy about coming to a public event after hearing about a tragedy like this. But I think that in the spirit of Gabrielle Giffords, that we should reaffirm and rededicate ourselves to public access, public engagement. I don't think it would be honoring her great work that she and we expect for her to carry on if we didn't get right back out there and engage in a spirited conversation about the destiny and shape of our democracy. And so I think it's important to make a very bold statement that we will affirm our dedication to having a robust, open, access, and free democracy by not letting forces of fear and hatred, desperation, and madness deter us from this very important and noble enterprise. God bless America, and we wait forward and we look forward to a speedy recovery from our colleague, Gabrielle Giffords. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, at this time I'd yield to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Nagelbauer, 2 minutes.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish I didn't have to rise today in support of this resolution because it was a sad day for America last Saturday. But let me say this on behalf of the people of the 19th Congressional District who I represent. We send our heartfelt condolences to the families and the friends and the loved ones of those who were killed in this senseless attack. We also offer our prayers for Gabby and the others that are making recovery from this act as well. You know, as I read through this resolution, and as many of you, like I have, been watching TV, Saturday was a bad day. It was a horrible day for America. Dana and I were in the shopping, grocery store shopping, and got the notice that my friend Gabby and our colleague Gabby had been shot, and others, and it was terrible. And as we've gotten an opportunity to watch over the last few days, what we learned is that out of this horrific act, we saw some of the things that make America great. We saw people tackle the attacker. We saw people offer assistance to Gabby and to others that were. We saw a man shield his wife from the attacker. We saw these first responders do remarkable work in getting these people to the hospital in what would be record time. But we saw so many of the good things about America at a time when we saw one of the bad things. And, you know, I was thinking as I was walking over here, thinking about Wednesday, I guess a week ago today, coming down on the elevator with Mark and Gabby and her parents, had a wonderful visit. I've had an opportunity to serve on the science committee with Gabby and went down for a lunch with her. She has a little interest in space, in case you didn't know it. And how sometimes we take for granted our friends and our acquaintances and life itself, and that in just a moment life can change. And so today we offer this resolution to recognize some good things about our country, to wish our good friend Gabby and Mark Gabby to get a complete recovery and to come back here. And we offer our prayers and our thoughts for our country. God bless America.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman. Madam Speaker, many of us have just come from a congressional prayer service for the victims of the terrible tragedy in Arizona, where we sang, "Heal Us Now." We all know in this body that Gabby Giffords is one of our brightest lights, smart, fair, courageous, and considerate of people of all points of view. She's a very effective legislator and a caring and thoughtful friend, and the people of Arizona could not have a better representative in this United States Congress. On Saturday, she was doing the job she loves so dearly and takes so seriously, meeting with their constituents, listening to their concerns when the senseless act of violence occurred. We come together to grieve for those who were killed, including Gabby's talented and energetic outreach director, Gabe Zimmerman, to pray for the quick recovery of those injured, and to honor those who, in a moment of chaos and violence, took heroic actions that saved the lives of many, including Gabby. Gabby Giffords is a person who is always thinking of others, her constituents, her staff, her colleagues. I spoke with her frequently during the very tough campaign she went through, and she was always just asking, how are her colleagues doing? And today, in that same way, Gabby Giffords would want us to be thinking and praying for the others, for her fallen and injured constituents, for her heroic staff. Gabe Zimmerman died doing what he loved, serving the people of Arizona. His many good works are a testament to the selfless works of public service performed by congressional staff every day for the people of our districts and our nation. Gabby Giffords has always conducted herself in a manner that brings honor on this people's house. She passionately advocates for the positions and issues she cares so deeply about, but always in a way that is respectful of opposing views. She is a fierce competitor but always considerate of others. That is why she was such a good role model for Christina. If I could have 30 additional seconds.
I'll yield additional 30 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized for 30 additional seconds.
I thank my colleague. That is why she was such a good role model for Christina Taylor Greene, the 9-year-old girl born on that terrible day, September 11, 2001, and gunned down on another awful day for our nation. Christina Taylor Greene, Gabe Zimmerman, and 4 others are tragically no longer with us. As we mourn their loss, we also pray for the full recovery of those who are injured. Gabby Giffords' light continues to shine, and she will continue to inspire young and old throughout Arizona and our nation. God bless Gabby Giffords and all the victims of this horrible tragedy.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, at this time I would yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Missouri, Ms. Emerson.
Gentlelady from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, we all get to know a person through the words of others, and for our colleague Gabrielle Giffords and for everyone affected by the violence in Tucson, the outpouring of prayer and emotion really tells a story of how we're all touched by these sad events. I think all of us draw strength from one another, hearing stories, the personal stories of relationships that they have had with Gabby, and it really does help us. I thought it would be important for us to also hear just a couple of stories, just a couple of sentiments from some of Gabby's friends and supporters back home, because they know Gabby perhaps in a little different way than we do. Carol Frazier writes, "Many prayers and much love to you and all the victims of this stupid tragedy. Gabby, you were what we need in Congress. I was so impressed with meeting you that you looked me in the eye and you truly listened to what I was saying." A high school friend, Erica Noble, writes, "Your entire UHS family is pulling for you. We just love you so much and are so proud to be your constituents." Scott Smith writes, "I hadn't even heard of you until this tragic event, Gabby. But you're in my thoughts, and I very much hope you pull through this, especially because you were doing your job talking to your constituents when this happened." And I think, like all of us here in the House of Representatives, Kathy Paradis expresses her sentiments best. Love you, Gabby. Stay strong. We're here for you. God bless Gabby Giffords.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes from the gentleman from Texas.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm from San Antonio, and in my hometown, about a year and a half, a convenience store owner was murdered by a robber. The brother of the slain owner observed that both his brother and the murderer both got up that same morning and made conscious choices. His brother chose to go to work and support his family, to do a right and a good thing. The murderer made a choice to rob and kill, an evil and a destructive thing. On January the 8th, 2011 in Tucson, many people got up that morning and made a choice to do the right and good thing. Only one person got up that morning and decided to do an evil and destructive thing. We cannot and will not allow the cruelty of one person to overshadow the goodness that each of his victims represents. We in this chamber are not helpless. We offer our prayers for those who died and for a speedy recovery for those who have survived. And to Gabby, I know we all join in saying, hurry back. This house needs you. We love you. But we can do more. We can set an example that creates a fertile environment for constructive discourse that extends beyond the confines of this Capitol. And despite the heartache and the tragedy of last Saturday, we find solace and inspiration that in our nation, the United States of America, the goodness of the many will always triumph over the evil of the few. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, at this time, it's my pleasure to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Mack.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today with sadness in my heart and a bit of anger for what happened in Tucson. I cannot help but to think that on that morning, a colleague of ours doing what she enjoyed to do, doing what is expected from a member of Congress, meeting with her constituents, talking about the important issues of the day. She went to work, she went to the grocery store that morning to listen to her constituents. And for someone to show up and pull the trigger is something that I don't think any of us will ever forget. I pray for Gabby. My thoughts and prayers go to all of the family members who have been affected by this tragedy. We hope and we cannot wait for that day when Gabby comes back to this floor, when she walks through that door. She joins us again. She casts a vote. Most importantly, though, I cannot wait to see that smile on her face. No matter who you are, whenever you met Gabby, she always greeted you with a smile, with kindness in her heart, with determination and strength. Gabby, we're praying for you. We pull for you. Our hearts and prayers are with you. You are missed, and we look forward to seeing you back on the floor of the House. Thank you, and God bless you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Indiana.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 2 minutes.
On behalf of all of the people of northern Indiana, we want to express our prayers and thoughts for the victims and the families of those killed and injured in Arizona. And to the staff of Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, we want to thank you for your service to our country and for your sacrifice to our country. And to my friend Gabby Giffords, who I came into Congress with in 2006, we love you and Mark. We miss you and Mark terribly. We are praying for your recovery, and we know you're getting stronger every day. And we can't wait to see you back here in the House again in the very, very near future. May God bless you, and may God bless our beloved country.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Olson.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank my colleague from California. Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of the resolution before the House and to pay tribute to my colleague and dear friend, Gabby Giffords. I've been privileged to call her a friend as the chairwoman of the Space and Aeronautics Subcommittee while I was the ranking member. We found that we share a deep passion for space and NASA, and we work closely on these issues together. In sitting in a hearing that Gabby was running, with your eyes closed, you'd be hard-pressed to know who is the Republican and who is the Democrat. And as a freshman member in Congress, it was heartening to know that while the controversial issues of the day may divide us, there is also room for collaboration and unity on both sides of the aisle. That was because of Gabby. I have no better bipartisan friend in the Congress than Gabby Giffords. Madam Speaker, She is warm and kind, but the Gabby I know is also tough. She will pull through this with her husband Mark by her side. I wouldn't bet against her. Other members of our House family need our support too. And I'd like to say a prayer for Gabe Zimmerman and his family, Gabby Stafford, who lost his life, as well as Ron Barber and Pam Simon, her other staffers who were victims in this horrible, horrible tragedy. We must also remember the others who lost their lives or were seriously injured. They are in our hearts, our prayers, as our nation begins the healing process. Madam Speaker, I'm going to close my remarks by talking to my friend as if she was here, because in many ways she is. Gabby, I know you feel things, hear things. I ask for 30 seconds.
Yield the gentleman additional 30 seconds.
Gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
I thank the chair and I thank my colleague from California. Gabby, I know you feel things. You hear things. When asked, you squeeze a hand. You hold 2 fingers up, and you hold a thumbs up. I know you feel the love and prayers of a Congress, a nation, and a world that only wants you to have a full and speedy recovery. My friend, right back at you. I'll see you when you get back in this chamber. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Massachusetts.
The gentlelady from Massachusetts is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise today to express my deep sympathy for the victims of the tragedy in Tucson, Arizona this past Saturday. Like all of us, I mourn for the grievous harm that came to those who attended Congresswoman Giffords' Congress on Your Corner, for our colleague Gabby, a courageous and conscientious lawmaker whose recovery and good health we all yearn for today, for a 9-year-old child bursting with innocent enthusiasm and great promise, for a respected jurist engaged in a simple act of friendship, for a kind and accomplished staffer, for a loving husband who instinctively shielded his wife from the rain of bullets, and for a husband also lovingly protective who was unable to stave them off. And finally, a widowed retiree still giving to her community, all so abruptly and violently losing their lives. And for those who are thankfully recovering, all engaged in the abiding promise of democracy, coming to talk with their congresswoman, gathering in the parking lot of a local supermarket on a Saturday morning. This horrific incident has raised many serious questions about appropriately identifying and caring for those who suffer from mental illness, about the accessibility of violent weapons, about the tone and language of our politics today, and about the solemn obligation of elected office in a democratic society, of those serving, of their staff, and of constituents eager to participate and be heard. But today we honor with our words those who tragically lost their lives and those harmed by this senseless act of violence. We pray for Gabby and all those still recovering, and we remember their families and loved ones now struggling with the immensity of their losses. In the days ahead, however, we must honor and remember them with our actions. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, this time I would yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Meehan.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
I want to thank my friend for yielding, and Madam Speaker, I rise and join my colleagues and in fact fellow citizens from across this nation in thought and prayer following the tragic assault on Gabby Giffords and 19 others in Tucson. I pray that in these critical hours, Gabby Giffords will heal and begin the path to a fuller recovery. Just yesterday, I was privileged to join a large number of my freshman colleagues as we went on a visit to the Walter Reed Army Hospital, where we were humbled and inspired by the remarkable strength of severely injured military heroes who are fighting to recover from their wounds. I pray that Gabby Giffords will be provided with a similar resolve. And I pray for those who lost their lives and the families of their loved ones who now struggle with grief. And I think particularly, having been a former prosecutor, of Judge John Roll, whose loss is being deeply felt by our colleagues in their service and public service from the judiciary. And while this tragedy was not related to his duties per se, it's a reminder that our judges too often face threats that impinge on the independence that they must be accorded for our system of government and freedom, and just as importantly, justice to prosper. Lastly, I want to say deep condolences to the family of Christina Taylor Green, whose grandfather, Dallas Green, is a member of the Philadelphia community, and who this tragic incident brought it home in a very personal way to the people of my region. Let us allow this horrible tragedy to inspire all Americans to become better instruments of peace.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Richardson.
The gentlelady from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I concur in expressing the sense of the House of Representatives with respect to the tragic shooting in Tucson, Arizona on January 8, 2011. Like all Americans, on Saturday morning, I was not only saddened, but I was sick to my stomach when I watched the horrible attack against my colleague, my office mate for 2 years, Congresswoman Giffords, known as Gabby to me, and her staff, her constituents, and all Americans. We know now on January 7th that Congresswoman Giffords reached out and sought new ways to reduce the highly partisan, divisive tone that all too often dominates our public discourse. So today, I'm going to do exactly that, not in words of criticism, but thoughts of observation and a desire to help. For lawmakers, whether federal, state, or local, this tragic incident must make us reevaluate our spending priorities and accept the fact that our continued failure to adequately fund mental illness is a mistake. For agencies, whether they be educational, military, or private vendors and businesses, we must be diligent in connecting the dots and making use of good technology to have real-time information. For parents, whether your child, who will always be your child, regardless of their age, should not be allowed under our own roofs to turn their rooms, garages, and backyards into private areas that we're even afraid to tread. For protectors and preservers of the law, it's not okay to tell me that nothing's wrong with receiving an email that says I'm concerned and looking for a good old-fashioned lynching. For those who debate and protest, it's not okay to spit, to say racial slurs, to say reload, or to arm in reference to debate, and it's also not okay for a group to reference others as Neanderthals or people who would wish for someone to die quickly. For our courts, even in 1919 and 1931, in the cases of Schneck versus United States and Neer versus Minnesota, our forefathers had the wisdom to know that the most stringent protection of the freedom of speech. Would the gentleman yield an additional minute, as our colleagues have?
I'll yield additional minute.
Gentlelady is recognized for an additional minute. In Neer versus Minnesota, they had the wisdom to know that the most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely shouting a fire in a theater and causing panic. So who would tell me that it would be appropriate that on August 17, 2009, that it would be appropriate for a man to carry an AR rifle and a pistol only feet from our president? And now for those of us who are here today, we turn to the resolution on the floor. On page 4, sections 7 and 8, the resolution says that we would have the right of people to peaceably assemble and that all would participate without being silenced or fear of intimidation. I'm sadly to say that yes, even in this own chamber, on these grounds, I don't think we've always fulfilled those words of peaceable assembly, free of intimidation. We too must not react, but it's time to act, not just in legislation, but to do what Congresswoman Giffords asked us to do, to reduce the divisive tone in this country. Maybe if we start as leaders, others will follow.
I express condolence, I pray for those on their recovery, and I also commit to work on this issue and to work with my colleagues. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Gibson.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I rise today on behalf of the people in upstate New York to express our deepest condolences and sympathies to all those affected by this horrific tragedy. We pray for those who lost their lives and for the recovery of those wounded in the attack. I first met Gabrielle Giffords many years ago at Cornell University, where we were graduate students together in the mid-1990s. I did not know her well, but we shared mutual friends who always spoke of her in the kindest of terms. Last night I heard from one of Gabby's good friends, Colin Forth, and he shared the following, quote, "Gabrielle is a strongly principled person who at Cornell continually worked towards improvement, finding a way to reach a positive agreement. I found myself continually impressed with her ability to see workable solutions to issues, even when we did not agree on the issue. Gabby is fun, passionate, intelligent, highly competent, and focused. She is a person who turns words into action, something that should be valued now more than ever." Close quote. Gabby, Cornell prays for you, and the citizens of upstate New York are reaching out to all those families affected by this senseless act of violence and praying that they may find peace, comfort, and healing. Thank you for this opportunity, Madam Speaker, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from California.
The
Ms.
gentlelady
Davis.
from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
I come here today shaken by an act of horrific proportions and yet heartened by bountiful acts of the human spirit. We are comforted that in these times the pain and the shock can be lightened, if only temporarily, by knowing that the good overwhelms the bad. I think that is how Gabby would want us to reflect today. We grieve for the losses and the pain felt in the community of Tucson for ordinary people who we learned are quite extraordinary. We know the tireless efforts of our own staff who come to work every day with one goal in mind, to help people. That's why we mourn the loss of Gabe Zimmerman. But most of all, I come here today to send in the most public way I can my love and mishaberach, a Hebrew prayer for the sick, which celebrates the spirit of healing to those recovering from their wounds, and particularly to my dear friend and colleague, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. People beyond Gabby's district are learning about the political acumen of this talented and engaging leader. As public servants, we do our jobs by listening to the American people, by looking constituents in the eye, assuring them that we want to help, letting them know we understand with a nod, a handshake, and most often a hug, as Gabby frequently was known to do. To have that important connection so shaken by the attempted assassination of our colleague and friend is devastating. But Gabby, of all people, was an example of what it means to be connected to your district. I know she wouldn't stand for this kind of violence, but she also wouldn't stand for allowing it to stop us from our service. Whenever she talked about her constituents, she prefaced it with, "I really understand where they're coming from, and we need to solve this problem." Her constituents are fortunate to have such a representative with such energy and skill who cares about them so deeply. May I have a minute, please?
I'll yield additional 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
The gentlelady is recognized for an
Who
additional
cares
30
about them
seconds.
deeply, their concerns and their fears and hopes, and who knows how to work with people from all political persuasions. My heart goes out to everyone affected by this massacre, and the shock from it reverberates throughout my community and our country. So I am listening to my constituents that hope that this tragedy will engage us anew in serious and civil discourse on how we can leave a better world for our children and our grandchildren. That is what Gabby strived to do daily. It is what she would want us to be doing right now.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Schuster, 3 minutes.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today with a heavy heart to join my colleagues in support of this resolution and to honor the innocent Americans whose lives were so senselessly and tragically altered by the events in Tucson last week. Gabrielle Giffords was embodying the very essence of what it means to be an elected representative in our great republic by meeting and listening to her constituents last Saturday. Gabe Zimmerman, Ron Barber, and Pamela Simon were there too, doing their jobs like thousands of other dedicated congressional staffers who support us and the work we do here every day in Washington and especially back in our districts. The Americans who lost their lives on Saturday and the innocent victims who were wounded were performing their civic duty to take an active role in their government, and among them were 9-year-old Christina Taylor Greene and Pittsburgh native Judge John Roll. In our disbelief of the events last week, let us not forget the heroism of those who subdued the attacker, preventing further loss of life. They put their own lives on the line to protect their neighbors. They represent the best of America and shined in our darkest hour. We will not allow this tragedy to weaken our resolve or to undermine the sacred responsibility that we as elected officials have to serve the people we represent. To allow this act of violence to keep us from our duties would be a disservice to the people we honor, especially Gabby. And Gabby was a friend of mine. We first became friends when I looked at her bio and realized that her family and her were operators and owners of a tire business, just as my family was. So not only could Gabby and I talk policy, but we could talk tire. And there are a few women that can talk tire, like Gabby. Also, I served on the Armed Services Committee with her and got to know her well, but got to know her very well. We traveled on 2 trips, one to Afghanistan and one to Iraq. It was the week before her wedding to Mark that we traveled, and she talked about looking forward to her marriage and to future trips. And just last week, we discussed going to Afghanistan again. So I look forward to Gabby's speedy recovery, for her return here to the House, and for that trip that we will take to Afghanistan to go greet our men and women in harm's way. So may God bless Gabby. May God continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Oregon.
The gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity to come together to express our sorrow and support for our friend and colleague, Gabby Giffords, and the 19 other victims of this senseless rampage. I cherish the time I spent with Gabby in Tucson to promote the livability of her community. There I've seen firsthand the respect Congresswoman Giffords commanded from the entire civic leadership. I witnessed the emotional connection between Gabby and her political supporters. They knew that she was somebody special, and you could see that she treated each and every one of them the same way. Then there's the bond between Gabby and her terrific team. It makes it so jarring, the loss of Gabe Zimmerman, the wounding of Ron Barber and Pam Simon of her office. Her outstanding staff is representative of the amazing men and women, over 10,000 in all, here on Capitol Hill and back home, who make the government process possible. They are like family, not just for Gabby. We must do all we can to protect the safety of staff and the employees who serve our country every day. Finally, this is about our relationship with Gabby and our responsibility to heal and repair. The path forward is illustrated by Gabby herself, the best example I know of someone who uses her intelligence, charm, passion, and commitment to bring people together. They can sort out the difficult issues that way and move forward with the same good humor, skill, and results as Gabby. As she recovers, I hope we can honor her service and sacrifice by doing all that we can to restore that spark, that civility, and commitment to civilized discourse. Madam Speaker, that's a tall order. Can we beat the odds? Our dear friend Gabby will show us how, as she is beating the odds right now. I'm confident her recovery will be a triumph of her spirit, will, and intellect, and be a further inspiration to us all.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, this time I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Reed.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise today without a script, but to send my thoughts and prayers and all of the thousands of people from my district out to the Congressman's family, to the Congressman herself, and to all the families that were affected by such a tragic day in our nation's history. We shall never forget what happened last Saturday. But as I walked into work today and I saw the sun breaking as it was coming up and shining on the dome of the Capitol, it was a glorious sight. Because what it reminded me is that even in our darkest days, this nation always will rise again. And as we stand here rightfully and pay our respects to our dear colleague and the families that suffered so much and are suffering as we speak, let us not forget that this nation will rise and we will persevere. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from New York.
The gentlelady from New York is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. The great state of New York certainly sends their wishes and their prayers to the great state of Arizona. New York State went through a horror the same as Arizona is going through now. It's so parallel, it's scary. 6 killed, 20 injured. My husband dying, murdered, my son shot. But this is really a message of hope, because my son did survive. Many of the victims survived. But I think the wonderful thing that needs to be out there are the prayers that came through from all parts of this country. Gabby's staff, you're suffering terribly. Those that have died, your families are suffering terribly. And those that have been wounded have to go through the pain to heal. What I'll say to all of you, time will heal you. You'll never forget, but time will make you smile again. Gabby would be so proud of this chamber today. One of the things that Gabby is known for, and how bipartisan she is, and she has brought this chamber together. It's just a shame that a tragedy has to bring us all together. You know, Gabby's going to be fine, and she will be back here. And she'll be over there hugging people, talking to people. But that's what we as a nation have to learn. We can disagree, but we need to work together. That is what Gabby wants, and that's what she'll push when she gets back here. So with that, the prayers of this nation go to all. God bless our country. God bless the victims. With that, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, at this time I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Schmidt.
The gentlelady from Ohio is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise today to recognize and honor our colleague Gabby Giffords and to mourn the loss of those that died in Tucson on Saturday, and to also pray for those who have been affected by this great tragedy, and to applaud the courage of those who risk their own lives so that others might live, and to thank the first responders and the healthcare professionals whose quick action and work saved their lives. You know, Madam Speaker, nobody ever thought Saturday would happen, especially Gabby. She was just out there doing her job. And when you think of the 20 families and the community and the nation and how we've been affected by this act of violence, you think of the little girl that went there to meet her congresswoman who never came home. You think about the person that took her, that wonderful neighbor who now will always think about, what if I hadn't have done this? What if I hadn't have said, would you like to come? Madam Speaker, there are so many people affected by this tragedy, and no one can ever understand the mind of a person that would do this random act of violence. But we as a nation can come together. We can recognize the courage of those that helped stop him. We can recognize the courage of those that are fighting for their lives, especially our Gabby. We can pray especially that this nation will never again see that kind of tragedy. And most importantly, Madam Speaker, we as a nation, and I know people have said to me, well, what can we do? We as a nation can pray. Get down on our knees every morning and every night. Pray for Gabby. Pray for her family. Pray for those folks that are suffering in the hospital. Pray for those moms and those dads and those brothers and those sisters and those aunts and those uncles and those grandparents that will never touch the family members again. Pray for Gabby's staff. Mourn the loss of her staffer. Mourn the loss of all 6 who perished. But most importantly, to pray that the folks that have been affected can have the courage to go on. You know, we had a prayer service, and Cantor Leon Shear wrote a beautiful song, and the end of the song he says, we pray for healing of people, we pray for healing of the land, and peace for every race and nation, every child, every woman, every man. I don't think any words can sum up what we need to do here now today. So let us pray for Gabby that she comes back and she fights for what she believes, and I welcome her spirited debate and her smile and her Pollyannic point of view. But let us hope that all of those that have been touched by this tragedy can heal, and heal in a short run. Thank you. God bless this country, and God bless all in it.
The gentlelady yields back her time. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, my wife Vivian and I were shocked and saddened to learn of the awful events in Tucson, Arizona last Saturday. First and foremost, our prayers are with Gabby Giffords, her family, her staff, and the other victims of this senseless tragedy. Since she was first elected in 2006, Gabby Giffords has been one of the brightest lights in this Congress. I've gotten to know her personally in the Blue Dog Coalition, and she's my friend. I've been especially impressed by her intelligence, her warm personality, and her singular ability to bridge differences and bring people together. These qualities and the fact that she was attacked while serving her constituents make the situation all the more heartbreaking. In the book of Isaiah, it is written, "Come, let us reason together." Let us then take this opportunity to pause and reflect on the lives of the victims, the heroism of the first responders, and the bedrock principle of American democracy, reaffirmed in the resolution before us today, the right to assemble peacefully and to petition the government for the redress of grievances. We must not let violence or the threat of violence deter us from representing our constituents and doing the nation's business. God bless Gabby Giffords, the other injured, the families of those who were killed, the people of Arizona, and the United States of America. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, at this time it's my privilege to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Freelandheiser.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, Saturday was indeed a grim day for our nation. It was the day our beloved colleague, Gabrielle Giffords, was attacked while doing her job, listening to her constituents. It was Gabby herself who aptly said just last year that the term representative is more than a job description, than a job title. As we all work to represent our constituents in our states and nation, the Speaker is correct when he said that an attack on one who serves is an attack on all who serve. Last weekend, Gabby's efforts to serve her constituents brought her staff, herself, and her constituents into a line of fire from a deranged man who shot 21 defenseless innocent citizens. 6 people died and many were wounded. Phyllis Schneck was a 79-year-old native of New Jersey who lived during the summer on Green Pond section of Rockaway Township in my congressional district. She was one of those. Mrs. Schneck and her late husband Ernie lived for years in Towako, and they were active members of the Oak Ridge Presbyterian Church. She was a member of the Montville Women's Club. She was a mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. Hers, as were the others, were lives well lived. Mr. Speaker, our minds reel from Saturday's violence. Our hearts ache for those slain and injured and their families and friends. However, as is so often the case when an act of random cruelty bewilders and depresses us, exceptional displays of generosity, courage, and heroism can serve as a potent counterweight. These acts remind us of the extraordinary selflessness that people are capable. Let's remember and salute those acts today. Mark and Gabby, we are thinking of you. We are behind you all the time. We love you.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Ohio.
The gentlelady from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the resolution and join my dear colleagues and on behalf of the people of Northern Ohio, join citizens across our nation in pouring out compassion and healing to the families and citizens of Arizona who have been so harmed and wounded at liberty's doorstep, the U.S. House of Representatives. Let our prayers and comfort flow to the victims, to the healers, to those who must carry forward with full memory and understanding of what has transpired and why. Let us strive to do and to be so much better as a people. Our collective feeling of brotherly and sisterly love and the unity that flows from it holds the power to heal. We all feel that desire. Our constituents feel that desire. Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, our beloved colleague, is fighting to show us the way forward. We pray for her and her family. We pray for all victims and their families. We pray for all those who are taking this difficult journey with them. What a remarkable young woman Gabby is. She represents the highest aspirations of America. She is kind, talented, highly motivated, effervescent, and so in love with her husband, Mark. And we know Gabby is a fighter, and so very enjoyable to be with. We embrace her, her family, her staff, with the same affection as would she. And if Gabby were able, at this moment, we know she would be embracing the victims of the fallen and their loved ones. This is a moment for America to take stock of itself. No one should have to endure what these citizens have had to endure. And frankly, no one should have had to endure the mean-spirited and insightful political campaigns Gabby did. In the sweep of history, this attack was an attack on liberty. It desecrates our worth as a people. We must all search our souls. How could such a heinous act transpire? If the evidence shows that unaddressed mental illness coupled with guns and disturbing internet postings were contributing factors, may I ask for an additional 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Gentlelady is recognized for 30 seconds.
If the evidence shows that unaddressed mental illness coupled with guns and disturbing internet postings were contributing factors, as when 2 Capitol Police officers were gunned down just a decade ago outside this chamber, then Congress must finally engage that which to date it has been unwilling to fully embrace and understand. When human tragedy falls at your knees, do you look away, or do you stoop to pick up the pieces and ask why? Why? May God bless America. May the campaigns of 2012 be conducted in a manner that brings credit to our nation's highest aspirations, mindful of the suffering that has occurred. And may God give America and her leaders and her people great wisdom in the days ahead. I yield back my remaining time.
Gentlelady, time has expired. The gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, at this time I would like to yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Biggert.
The gentlelady from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I rise today with a heavy heart to express my condolences to the families and loved ones of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, her staffer Gabe Zimmerman, and all the victims of last Saturday's shooting. Like all my colleagues here today, I have struggled to make sense out of this horrible tragedy since first hearing the news that our good friend and colleague had been viciously attacked. As I watched the news and learned about the innocent lives that had been cut short, it became painfully clear to me that nothing will ever be able to explain such an atrocity. Politics is the art of genteel disagreement, and actions like those we witnessed last Saturday have no place, no excuse, no explanation, nor rationalization in our democratic system. What I do know is that Gabby is fighting hard for her life, fighting with the same tenacity that fueled her passion for public service, and I take comfort in the knowledge that my friend is winning that battle. Like Gabby, we must never stop fighting for our great democracy and the time-honored traditions that keep it strong. Neither we nor our constituents, all 300+ million of them, will not be intimidated by the violent actions of the few. As Americans, we will come together and mourn for those who lost their lives that day, and we will honor the survivors and heroes of this tragedy that stood strong together in the face of madness. Madam Speaker, I join all my colleagues here today to express my support for this resolution, and I know I speak for all my constituents in the 13th District of Illinois when I say that we share in the loss of our friends from Arizona, and our thoughts and prayers are with their families at this difficult time. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Arizona.